Welcome to Passion and Profit. If you're a small business owner or solo entrepreneur, this episode is for you. It would not only help you achieve your business goals, but it will also help you enjoy the process. Let's get started.
The biggest risk is not understanding your own replenishment rate or the speed of replenishment on products. I mean, ultimately, if you are in a business that sells products, don't have it, you can't make any sales. And so if you're able to manage that replenishment rate and the turnover relative to your sales for any given period of the year, I think that's the number one thing that you should be focusing on.
Passion and Profit with your host, Dalmith Morales, the podcast for makers and manufacturers. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Passion and Profit. I'm your host, Dalmith. This podcast is created by Inventora, the all-in-one inventory system for makers and manufacturers. Today, we are going to talk about how suppliers prepare for the busy season. And I'm really excited because we have Roger from Village Craft and Candle. It's a supplier, and I'm really excited because they are very in place and they have a lot of experience, suppliers experience. So I'm really excited to have you here. Roger, thank you for joining us and welcome.
Oh, thanks, Delmith. I'm equally excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and the listeners of this, which I think is a great topic for a great time of the year.
Yes, absolutely. I think we have our listeners are makers, and honestly, when you have a business, you actually need to understand how suppliers work to prepare your business as well. So I think this is the perfect conversation that we need to hear. So, but first, I want to give you the time to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background and what is Village Craft and Candle.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. For those that are not aware, Village Craft and Candle is an online wholesaler of candle making supplies, end to end. So all components on making your product, whether it's wax, fragrances, wicks, jars, all other components. We ultimately provide every single constituent to make your candle at wholesale availability. And what that means is basically we're bringing the ability to buy at wholesale volumes without needing the necessary volume to buy to get the prices that we're able to achieve to get to our customers. And so it helps small businesses out that want to scale, want to be able to grow, but not necessarily take on that added risk and financial concern by putting out all this money for product that they don't necessarily need at the moment, but they've got a reliable partner like ourselves to be able to deliver them what they need when they need it.
Oh, amazing. I think for people that are just starting, this is the perfect way to start. A lot of suppliers are just for wholesale and a lot of quantities. And sometimes we start with that because there are no other options in the market and we start losing a lot of money. And I think having suppliers that are really concerned and support small business owners is just perfect. And I think it's like they go in hand so well that we can be able to be more profitable and be successful in our businesses, right?
Yeah, I think much like yourself. I mean, Inventora is doing no different in the sense that there's a gap in the market. You've been able to, help provide a solution to a type of customer who happens to be the largest in population in our economy, which are small businesses. And the downside, that we face as small businesses is that there isn't as many resources that we can rely on, especially in areas that we've perceived to be needing to make this massive investment, such as inventory systems, for an example, or whether it's buying supply at a competitive rate. One business may think they would need to buy a tremendous amount of volume in order to substantially get the price that they need without even having the necessary space to store it all. And we've filled in that gap and we've alleviated that tension to say, we're here to provide you what your business needs so you can focus on creativity. But more importantly, we're able to support that reliability that you're looking for as a small business.
Definitely. I think we need more of those type of businesses, right?
Yeah, of
Um,
course. Absolutely.
So, first, like the main question, and I think it's something very important for small business owners to understand, is how suppliers prepare for the busy season. So, can you give us like how do you manage that with your company?
Yeah, it's a good question, and again, a lot of people don't know this, but we prepare for the busy season, which is the holidays, back in June. And so, we call it Christmas in the summer. And it's only because of the fact that all of our planning, whether it's forecasting on our purchases of supply, working with our vendors to possibly increase the volume of some of the main products that we know our customers are going to be needing at a faster turnaround time. And we can't necessarily afford the wait just because everybody, for the most part, is typically busy around this year. Specifically, if you're around, if you're in the industry of consumer goods, direct to consumer type of platform, and so we do all of our planning in June and July in the sense of knowing what to expect to have landed in this time of the year. And so it's critical that we take historicals as part of our analysis, if you will, but also at the same time looking at where the market is, getting an idea of certain trends that are going to be created in those periods, and then we try to accommodate that with replenishment of stock, pricing programs, availability for our customers, and almost allowing them to get the ahead of the curve a little bit and informing them to start planning their holiday season almost as early as we do. And for the most part, that is the trend that everybody's taking.
Okay. That yeah, I think it for makers and small business owners, I think they work pretty similar. They start preparing for the holidays and all of those the busy season on August, July, but honestly, once you have the idea of how suppliers work, and if you have that communication with your customers, it's just like I don't know, like an alarm or an alert, right? For them to just say, okay, this is the perfect time to start doing it by and start prepping as well. Because if I do it in November, they are not going to be able to fulfill my order, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think one thing to understand too is that it's not just the time of the year that is that's that spike. It's everything else in your business that also is going to spike that is not customer facing. Back end deliveries are going to go up in the sense of there's a higher amount of trucks that are on the road this time of the year. There's the possibility of delays in production. There is the possibility of possibly too many outreach programs from companies. As customers, as a consumer, I'm one of them, from a variety of merchants, you don't want to get 50 different emails a week of possible promos and programs, and you get overwhelmed and it's just too much, and your inboxes are saturated with the same type of communication from a variety of different merchants. So a lot of it is planning much ahead of time is to alleviate a lot of that congestion that is typical for that time of the year, or any time of the year that would maybe a spike for whatever business and whatever industry you may be in.
Mhm.
And trying to kind of take a step back and looking at it from a customer's perspective and saying, if I'm a customer, what don't I want and what do I want within these periods of the year? And then almost value engineering it as a supplier and saying, okay, well, how do I accommodate that? And can I accommodate it at the same time? And so, like, this is it may be somewhat of an untraditional method, but it's there's so much going on in such a little amount of time that you don't want to be in the middle of that bottlenecking, right?
Yeah. And now that you mentioned that, what are like the most common challenges that suppliers face when you're in the busy seasons? Because I know it's not just the end of the year. You have busy seasons in like in the middle of the year
Sure.
or something like that, right? It can
Yeah.
be anytime.
So, are you saying what are the more common issues that suppliers like us are facing, or customers are facing with us suppliers?
I think you as a supplier, and then we can discuss like the most common mistakes that you see customers facing in this busy season.
Yeah, I'll first touch up on some of the key things that can happen that actually create a little bit more of a hurdle to jump over than some throughout the year. I'll call it off busy season, non-peak, is really underestimating the sales volume of a particular category or product that you carry, and may not have enough inventory throughout a period of the year that you really need it. And so the trouble that some merchants have is, we come across holiday season, for example, and that is that we may be carrying products that have a longer than normal lead time to get replenished. And when you do, let's say, a Black Friday, Cyber Monday sale, you still have a good chunk of that season as high season. And so if some of those products do better than you expect them to do during a holiday sale weekend like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or just generally doing better because you may be one of the very few merchants that carry some of these products a little bit more reliable than others, or just have it and no one else has something, that ability to turn over and replenish that product at a period of the year when you still need it at the highest level is a huge concern for us in our forecasting ability, in our ability to ensure that we have product. And regardless of the size of business that you are, that you currently are, you don't want to overstock, but you also don't want to understock. So it's extremely critical to hit what you feel is a comfortable number of volume inventory to have to compensate for busy season, but also potentially have on hand while the volume of sales may taper off a little bit post holidays. If you're in that industry, I think just generally speaking, though, the biggest risk is not understanding your own replenishment rate or the speed of replenishment on products. I mean, ultimately, if you are in a business that sells products, don't have it, you can't make any sales. And so if you're able to manage that replenishment rate and the turnover relative to your sales for any given period of the year, I think that's the number one thing that you should be focusing on. So you're ahead of it. Because if you're caught and you're shorthanded on product, the trouble is that people are typically fast decision makers and they want to pivot in areas where they can get that reliability. And sometimes you just don't have time to replenish and bring that customer back.
In time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us, the small business owners, that happens too, because, and I think it's hard. I don't know if you have like and something that can work for us. For example, if it's your first year in business, how can you deal with and guess how many inventory you should have to not be able to overstock your company?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it comes down to who you're buying from. And, there really isn't, I mean, if you're a new business, there isn't a magic formula. You're not going to really know. You're going to have a harder time, especially because you have no historical data to let you know what you may have sold in previous years or previous months. But I would start with the supplier, and I would, ask the supplier what their inventory levels look like for that particular product or products you're buying, to get an understanding of, are they reliable? Is this something that they may have the equivalent of 20 days of, and you need to be able to ensure that you can buy 6 months worth, but periodically as you need it, and challenging the supplier to ensure that they've got a reasonable grasp on their inventory can actually provide some comfort where you may not necessarily need to take a longer leap in buying more inventory than you need to accommodate some of that unreliability. And another question to ask your supplier, in addition to inventory levels and if this is a consistent product, is ensuring if something like this were to get sold out, how long does it take to replenish? And this gives you a good gauge in terms of the supply chain that they're dealing with. Not necessarily where they're getting it from, but more around what is the process of their supply chain. Does it have to cross the water? Does it have to go on rail? Does it go on one or two different trucks? And so all that could help gauge your planning, I guess you can say, because if you're using your supplier as your main, inventoried warehouse, to say the least, for your business, you want to make sure that they're not going to hold you short, and you understand their business as well as you might know yours. And I think, even for us, we take pride in our ability to always stay on top of making sure that we're delivering products that we know are consistently in demand by our customers, and understand that if should they not be available, it can negatively impact the business's ability to continue to sell and be able to deliver to their customers. And so we take pride in ourselves in making sure that, we're on top of our scheduling and forecasting, but we're very transparent. I think at the end of the day, if we're in a position where we may not have product come in at a quick enough replenishment rate that we need it to be, we'll let our customers know and say, look, if you're planning on ordering, this is probably the time to do it. Only because that, we may run the risk of not getting this back in stock, for a longer than normal period. Luckily, we haven't been in a situation where we needed to do that, especially in the last 2 years after, with COVID being kind of taking a huge hit on supply chain. We had to navigate through that quite extensively and to ensure that we're working with our partners and our vendors and our shipping companies a lot more frequently to make sure that we're planning our supply chain appropriately so our customers don't take the short end of the stick. However, since kind of COVID and the stabilization post-pandemic, there are certain areas that if you neglect and you take for granted, suppliers like ourselves will be caught shorthanded and we won't be able to deliver to our customers. And so making sure that you challenge your suppliers, regardless of where you are in that supply chain, I think is very critical.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think I don't know if all of the suppliers have that because with what you're saying, I know that you have a great communication with your customers,
Mhm.
and that's really good. And the clients really appreciate that because that's what matters. And you have more engaged and you have more security that you're going to have your products and your supplies on time and all of that.
Mhm.
Um, and it's good to have the suppliers as one of your metrics at the beginning. And of course, to ask all of those questions are like the critical thing for start preparing and planning everything to have everything in stock and on time. But I'm curious, and I don't know if you guys had an experience, like a bad experience, where you said, okay, this is not working, or what we can do to fulfill orders right now. Do you have any story that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I think, as our businesses evolved, um, we went from looking at what may used to work to what needs to be changed in order to work for tomorrow. And that's something that I guess any business, should periodically do, depending on the size and the level of diversity you have in your company with regards to different functions and areas you need to look at. May differ the cadence of how you approach that. But nonetheless, when you look at something like, for instance, about a year and a half ago, we had a major concern with corrugated boxes, and this was, I guess, countrywide, if not globally. Paper and pulp mills were shutting down at a faster pace, and the availability for corrugated boxes was getting less and less, unless you had contracted with the supplier to say we're willing to commit to a certain amount of volume of corrugated boxes, for packaging supplies. And so it's not a customer front facing product, but
Mm-hmm.
the limited availability of what could have been a very very impactful circumstance negatively by not having boxes wouldn't allow us to be able to ship product out because we'd
Yeah.
have no method to ship it out. And
Mm-hmm.
so my point earlier was what used to work, buy as we may need,
Mm-hmm.
quickly changed to buy now for what we presume we're going to use for the year to be able to commit and lock in so we don't impact our deliverability to the customers. And so that's it's a live example. It's a happened to us. I mean, it was a very big scare for us in the sense that we had no idea if corrugated was going to be short for a certain amount of time. And so I think fundamentally we had to change the way our business did things. And that methodology was applied to a variety of different areas in the company that put us in a much, definitely a much more positive move forward approach. But at the time, it's something that you may not be anticipating. I think what people have to understand if you are in a predicament like that is it gives you an opportunity to look at where your businesses should be in the next year, 2 years, or 3 years from now, and be able to work that way if you have the ability to do so, or at least the partners to do it with. And I think in our space, what we're doing is a combination of we're fundamentally changing the way we run our business to continue to find efficiencies, to pass those efficiencies off to our customers, but at the same token, be able to provide other services and resources to our customers who may not be in a position to do it for themselves as well. And whether or not it's customers that are looking for packaging solutions, or if they're looking for storage, or if they're looking for bigger volume buys at what could be a more of a spread out model than having that full one-time commitment with a vendor. And so these are things of which didn't exist to our customers as late as probably 15 years ago, and in most cases doesn't really exist today to the extent that we think it should be. But we're trying our best to kind of bring that forward so that our customers don't fall into similar predicaments where their businesses are locked out and can't continue to perform any type of efficiency for their customers.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's hard when you have like no idea of how it works, and to have that in mind and to say, okay, that time of the year, like last year this worked, but maybe this time of the year is going to be different, and to have those slightly changes, because sometimes they're not like big deal, right? They're
Mhm.
just slight changes that you need to do to evolve, to make it work and be more functional for you, and be like, maybe they are going to bring more profit, or they're just going to facilitate a process that you have in your company, right? And I think that's key, not only for suppliers but also for makers that are just starting and they're trying to be so attached to a procedure or a type of method that they have, and just have an open mind and say, okay, let's evolve. Let's not buy what I need, but let's prepare for the future to have
Right.
something to offer then, right? And I think that's really good to know. And it's very important for us also, that you, like you mentioned, that you're also giving more resources to your customers so that they can rely on you and be able to fulfill more needs, right? And I think for people that are just looking for suppliers, because I know it's hard to find suppliers that are good and high quality and all of that, to have one that can offer you a variety of things and they are all great. I think that's perfect, and I think you guys are doing an incredible job with that.
Oh, thank you. I mean, again, it's a, a team effort to get us to where we need to be, but more importantly, it's the external team, companies like yourselves, that have helped us deliver a tremendous amount of value outside of the core function of our company, by being able to leverage great partners like yourself to help our customers out. And
Yeah.
for the most part, we know of customers that we have that are still operating a home-based business, and that's the nature of the world of a maker.
Hmm.
And home-based businesses are typically not companies historically that would be trying to look for inventory management systems,
Yeah.
and that should not be the case. I think there are tools and resources out there that, regardless of where you operate, how big you are, whether it is a side hustle or a primary source of income, I think the saying we have is, you got to almost act as if you, act as if
You.
you are already the biggest company
Yeah.
you want to be, or where you want to be in a year, 2, 3 years from now, and do it today. I mean, there's
Mhm.
no better time to develop and strengthen the infrastructure of a business when it is the most agile, and at a size where you can pivot. And it allows you to try different things, allows you to explore a variety of different extra tools and services for your company without necessarily causing this, crazier ripple effect through the company. And so partners like yourselves at Inventora help our customers out, get a gauge on, what is my inventory? How do I track my inventory? How do I properly forecast? And those are things of which, companies like ourselves are not going to go out and create as our own product, because it's not the nature of our business. But the nature of our business is being able to help our customers who are entrepreneurs trying to monetize their efforts. Well, there's this one common denominator. Everyone's very creative. our customers are some of our customers are some of the most creative people I've ever met in my life. And with that, there might be this slight and very, very innocent amount of ignorance that's around other areas of the company, which can't blame them. They're focusing on the best part of their business, which is their brand and their name and their vision. And so partners like yourself or any other partner that we leverage in other areas of operating the business is so critical. We create this ecosystem of support and service that allow us to fill in the gaps wherever that may be needed, to make someone's business, scale along the journey effortlessly as much as possible. And that is including our ability to bring product at a rate that they would need it, continue to release trend reports, so our customers and our community is aware of what may be happening in the next season so they can plan and prepare. Whether those are taken into use or consideration, we do this because that is our responsibility as a deliverable to our market and our community. I think it's unfair to say that we just want to bring product in and sell. We're not that type of business. We're a supporter customer first, and that is in the form of products, services, resources, and support in so many different facets, right?
Yeah, definitely. And to be honest, I think when you have a business and you start noticing that inventory management goes very in hand with the suppliers communication with the
Yeah.
suppliers, uh, also with the production of your products, everything that makes your business a business a profitable business, we can say. uh, it goes in hand with everything. Everything is connected. So if something is missing, and I think inventory management, it's something that a lot of people just leave behind. They don't like it. Um, but I think once you have everything connected and you understand that overall, you really need all of those things in order to have a successful business, that's where you hit the spot and you say, okay, this is what I'm doing right now. This is what it's working and it is going to work in the future. So I think, like you said, partnering with partners like yourself, like suppliers like yourself, and also with other brands that can bring educational things that can leverage small business owners is the key for them to be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. And I think for now, just circling back to the busy seasons, um, I do have a question because sometimes we don't know how suppliers handle shipping and shipping delays when this season comes. So, can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think it's an area that people allow to happen, specifically delays, just because it's out of everyone's control, which it truly is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most we can do without actually physically delivering product is working with our suppliers. So going back to this level of communication and transparency and proactiveness, uh, to educate them on what may be spike season, what may require a little bit more attention out of the typical pickup and delivery schedules. And so what I mean by that is, in our world, which you're fully familiar with, between the months of, let's say, September and February is typically a higher shipment outbound, product on the road versus the second half of the year. Spring summer is usually quieter than fall winter in terms of specifically candle making, I should say. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what we do around end of August is we inform our carriers that we're going to need spikes every single day. And what that means is that when we do our pickups on orders that come in, our carriers are aware of the fact that there's going to possibly be more orders on a daily basis than there have been in previous months. And what that does is that it makes the carrier pick up more orders and be able to ship them out faster than delaying that process. And that's ultimately what it ends up being, right? It's basically
Yeah.
saying that there's going to be this. this spike in parcels at these multiple depot centers that have to be organized and delivered. And so, what is out of our control is the choice a customer makes in terms of the speed of the delivery. You know, I guess for layman terms, there's your standard, your expedited, priority, and all other options that you can choose from a few different of the traditional carriers that are out there, ground carriers that are out there. And so the what we're able to do up until that product goes on the truck is work with our suppliers to ensure that they're aware of the fact that these orders are going to be there's a spike and they have to be picked up way more frequently to make sure that we don't lose sight on what the expectation is of the deliverable. And so, you know, you may be choosing expedited as a customer, but
Mhm.
expedited shipment doesn't expedite the fulfillment or the pickup of the parcel. It just changes the speed of which that parcel is being delivered after it goes to the depot center. And
Yeah.
so ultimately, it is the merchant or the supplier's responsibility to work with the carriers to let them know that in order to prevent these delays, we have to change our frequency and change the speed of our pickups to make sure we accommodate these customers that are needing it, and more importantly, mitigate these cluster delays that could happen during this time of the year. And we've done so successfully, and I can confidently say that we manage it really well where people don't typically have any issues with it.
Mhm.
um, Specifically, standard shipments that don't have a higher priority in speed are still getting to the doors within expected timeframes.
Yeah, and I think you offer a lot of options for customers to choose from.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think that's very useful. And of course, sometimes it won't work, but it's going to be very minimum, right? It's not going to be happening all the time. And like you said, you are very aware of what can come, and you prepare beforehand in order to be able to ship and avoid delays if possible.
Right, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And now talking about pricing, I know that sometimes the prices change during the busy seasons of the supplies. Can you talk about that a little bit? I know that sometimes it's cheaper, or sometimes you have promos, or sometimes the price goes up. Can you give us, like, how do you handle that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, good question. This goes back to the comment I made about what worked before doesn't work for tomorrow. And this was
Mhm.
one of the areas of our business that, we looked at holistically and said how the business was operating a year or 2 years ago cannot operate a year and 2 years from now, with
Mhm.
specifically around pricing. And so what we've committed to is really working with our major suppliers on establishing more of an annualized pricing program. And
Mhm.
so we try to limit and mitigate the volatility of pricing from a cost perspective, which will then, evidently change the pricing of what it is to the customer. And we do that by making a commitment, committing to certain volumes, um, developing a buying program that allows us to have further awareness of what our costs will be, as
Mhm.
opposed to being surprised with a price increase. And then also, we've established that should there be a price increase to some of our products, we've developed relationships where we're well aware of when that will happen in a period of the year so that we can make certain changes to how we operate for that particular product that won't necessarily drive that impact to the customers directly. And
Okay.
so we've put a much more conscious effort on honing in on our cost of products, being able to develop a buying program, streamline that annually, so that
Mhm.
we at all causes try to not go to the market with price increases when we're all exhausted and overwhelmed with costs going up all over the place, no matter where we are and what we're doing, whether it's groceries, utility bills, just overall cost of living, while at the same time trying to work on driving more efficiencies on the back end to mitigate that. So if in case something does go up in price,
Mhm.
we're absorbing it because we can afford to, because we're shaving out on
Got it.
identifying more efficiencies to support that business.
And I don't know if you like try to have more of a specific products on hand, or do you plan the demand of all the products just the same in the seasons?
No, so there's definitely a different purchasing schedule for different products, and even similar products in the same category have different schedules of how we buy. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of it has to do with the fact historically, what customers were buying versus where we think they'll be buying, at the next period of purchases.
Mhm.
Um, but also, it all comes down to vendors, geography, cost of moving the product. And so, what most businesses need to focus on is, um, there may be product that, let's say, you turn over every, you know 3-4 times a year, but it costs you so much to bring this one turnover amount of product in. It's in your best interest to just maximize the truck at
Mhm.
once, bring it in and have that product on hand, and be able to kind of run through different programs throughout the year, to mitigate that increase of cost of shipping, for instance, as one example. And
Yeah.
so for us, we work with a number of different vendors, and across a number of different categories of product. And so the the ongoing task for us is to ensure that, we make sure products available for customers. B, we make sure that we don't continuously change prices on customers because our buying is not effective. We have no gauge on shipping costs. Like, these are things that they don't slip by us. We're always on top of it, and we've got the proper systems to make sure that we
Mhm.
deliver the most efficient approach to it. But more importantly, we're looking at things to say, can we make more sense out of possibly getting more of something, um, as opposed to waiting for the time when we think we may need it, and then we're caught with a big increase or time that we can't have to afford to replenish that stock. We look at all of that holistically, and then we buy accordingly to that. And so seasonal spikes will have obviously a huge play for that. But trends is another big thing that we typically look at quite often, especially on season changes, and
Mhm.
just overall demand for product by category. We've seen a lot of shift in demand for certain products. Whether it's a certain vessel, people go from wanting certain types versus not wanting it anymore. Well, we have to make those fundamental changes, and that volume drops as a result of that. And so those are things that we look at periodically, from a categorical perspective, and then we narrow it down to a by product within a category quite often, actually.
Yeah, I think that's something that varies a lot. And I think it works similar to the one like us that are direct to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
It works pretty similar. Sometimes people are just looking for in a specific type of candle, but next month they're just gonna look for something completely different, and the other ones are just gonna be like not in trend anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
now with social media, that it's crazy. I must say,
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, fragrance is a big one for us because citronella, for instance, is a very
Mhm.
popular fragrance, come early spring, as people start making products to accommodate for, summertime outdoor accessories and fragrance aromatic products. Um, Whereas citronella doesn't exist in sales, come September. And the
Yeah.
same thing goes for pumpkin spice or anything related to the, festive season, doesn't exist in May as much as it would in the fall. And so, that obviously has an effect on what we purchase. We're not going to go out and buy a year's worth of fragrance that's not in season for 9 out of the 12 months. But there's definitely products that we do that with, only because it allows us to streamline that deliverable to the customer, and
Yeah.
we remain, providing them a competitive product at a competitive price.
I always say that having like a classic collection or something
Yeah,
basic in your
love it.
business, yeah, it's so useful because that's something that you can keep in stock all year long,
Yes.
and I think that's super useful.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I love the timeless collection, and
Yeah.
especially in our world, whether you're making personal care, home outfitting, just home glamour, if you will, whether it's diffusers, room sprays, candles, etc. Having something that's timeless is so critical, um, because then you're not changing the decor of your home or changing the look of your home every 3 months.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we're putting more emphasis on, and that customers are starting to do as well, is this continuity of fragrance in every area of your home, whether it's detergent, candles, diffusers, room sprays, even your skincare line in your personal care. If you like a particular fragrance, there's no harm in having it in all the other products you use, whether it's personally or within your home. And
Mhm.
there's a level of timelessness to it, because you like it, there's a connection to it, and it can be used all year round across every facet of your life. And there's such a strong connection that makers can make with that, and creating this timeless but this personal connection to their own customer. And so we
Yeah.
we try to build more around that, because it eliminates the need for our customers to just constantly stress about what's the next thing to make.
Mhm.
And I think if you use something as consistent as fragrance, I think the biggest change is really, what application am I using it in, as
Mhm.
opposed to the fragrance itself, right? And now you can build out products that are more of your classic line, if you will, based on a fragrance that is well received and liked by a majority of the people across a
Mhm.
number of different applications, and that's your diversity, right?
Yeah.
And it limits the ability to have so much stock on hand. You don't have to have a variety of different SKUs of fragrance. And now you're building this brand on more of a use what you love, rather than
Mhm.
trying to stress out on how many different fall fragrances should I be bringing in, as opposed to saying, how can I put this fall fragrance into other applications that you would use across your home and personally.
Absolutely. And I think that for you guys also it's very helpful for people to just stick to some kind of supplies, because also it helps you figure out what people really need the whole year and what people need by seasonality. I think that's perfect. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I just, every time we bring out a new product, and I mean, myself specifically, I love everything we bring in, and you want to try it. You want to make stuff with it. The new colors that are coming out, the new textures, the new shapes and sizes. Like, these are things that excite makers, to want to try and promote, because there's that concept of new and fresh. And so we put a conscious effort in making sure that we bring in enough at a reasonable rate,
Mhm.
so our community knows that there's this constant connection to relevance. What's new, but what's manageable at the same time. You're not going to switch your product line every 3 weeks because a new jar is coming in every 3 weeks. You
Yeah.
just can't do that. It's just not sustainable. And
Mhm.
so, having enough of a change to be able to start diversifying while maintaining what has been proving to be successful for you, I think is a great way to approach product diversity and new product entry to your customers.
Totally. I completely agree. So I think my last question is if you can tell your customers, if you can give them an advice for the peak season to prepare and have everything ready on time, what would it be?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll split it up into two quick answers. Number one, from a plan and prepare perspective, I would say the earlier you start, the better. The Christmas in July, Christmas in the summer approach, I think is your safest move. And for those that have been doing it, have a pretty strong awareness of that at this point. For those that are starting to get into it, it's the best piece of advice I can provide you for planning and preparing. Assuming all other things you have under management, your inventory, your cash management, all those other things. I think from the creative side of it, starting as early as you can, to be ahead of the seasonal trend and the seasonal spike. Planning early is definitely a must. On the
Mhm.
other side of it, I think what people do is, and this is, I'm guilty of it too, is what someone creates is the thing they love the most. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the thing your customer wants. And
Mhm.
as a maker, we get caught up in the joy of making and creating, and emotionally connecting to what we've done, thinking it's going to be the next best thing. To save yourself money and time, um, and stress, because it happens,
Yeah.
is I strongly advise that you get to know who your customer is and what kind of customer do you want to sell to. I think it's extremely critical you learn about your customer before your customer learns about you. And it becomes an easier process that way. The faster and the more you learn about who your customer needs to be, the easier it's going to be to make your product and deliver it to your customer for them to know about you. And the reason why I say that is because as business as entrepreneurs and as business owners and just generally people who are excited about creating and delivering to the market, we have this, or I should say I have this, naive thinking of saying everything that's going to be brought out is going to be liked by everybody. And that's just the excitement of an entrepreneur. Everyone, gets up and says, I got the best product, everyone's going to love it. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. The moment
Yeah.
you connect with that, you have to ask yourself, A, what is the product that I want to make? Who am I as a brand? And who are my customers that will resonate with that? And the more you learn about all those areas of your business, the easier, faster, and cheaper it's going to be to make up your product, because it saves you from having to test the market with what you think is going to be appreciated and well received, but isn't. And now you got to go back to the drawing board. And that may cost you more than just your time because you may have supplies that don't connect with who your customer is. And the moment you define that, you can start realigning and shifting your creativeness to support that and build a brand for yourself, make a name for yourself, because that brand is ultimately the equity you have in the market. And I think that's so critical. And where our strong suit is we try to accommodate a variety of different brands, if you will, in the sense of we're not streamlining ourselves to selling only product or having services for a certain type of maker. We're saying, regardless of the type of maker you are and the products you want to make, we have you covered end to end. And we'll work with you on trying to establish how do you want to develop the brand you want to become and how do you want to connect with those customers. But I think those are the two biggest pieces of information that you need to get first before you actually start curating those products, because then you'll see how fast you'll be able to move those products when you have that.
Love it. I completely agree with you. It's something that we all need to have it in mind to understand, not to be so connected to something and think it's going to be the best product ever, but also just take a look back, think about what you really need to do. And I think that's perfect. I think that piece of advice is something that we should have like in our wall all the time, just to have that in mind every time. But
Yeah,
thank you so much, Roger, for being here, for having this conversation with me. It was really good. It was really helpful. And everyone, there you have my conversation with Roger. Um, Go check out Roger and Village Craft and Candle in the link of the show notes. I hope you find this episode helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a follow. And if you like the episode, please share it with your friends or family. And thank you for being here.
thanks,
Until
Dylan.
next time. Thank you so much, Roger. And if you're interested to learn more about Inventora to help you manage your supply orders, visit inventora.com.